Group Hug sucks. And here's why. Look, there are many types of decks in Magic. Tokens, Enchantress, artifacts, stacks, tribal decks, blink decks. But there's only really two that I actually really never want to see at the table. Group Hug and Chaos. For Chaos, let's take that, throw it in an oubliette, and I'll talk about that in another video. Today, I'm going to talk about Group Hug. First, I want to clarify what I mean by a Group Hug deck. Politics decks are not the same. Just because your deck can help an opponent doesn't mean that you're a Group Hug deck. There are plenty of decks that are trying to wheel and deal and get their opponents to do some of the heavy lifting for them to further their own goals. And I don't mind politics decks. They're actually really cool and really interesting. Honestly, I feel like more people should play them. Maybe I'll make a video on that. Also, putting one Collective Voyage in your deck doesn't make your deck a Group Hug deck. I'm talking about the straight up no win condition, no backup combo, no game plan, just helping your opponents with zero intention to win. That deck. That is a Group Hug deck that I really dislike. First off, I feel like everybody should at least attempt to win the game. I'm not saying you need to put Thassa's Oracle in your deck or throw breach combos in your deck, but like have some game plan. It doesn't need to be a CDH deck. Crab Tribal is fine, as long as you're trying to do something to end the game. Imagine you're playing a different board game, like Catan, let's say, and one friend is there and they are just rolling the dice. They're not building anything, they're not doing anything at all on their turn, just rolling the dice, collecting the resources, that's it. Now, yes, they are technically playing the game, and I guess it is speeding up because other people get resources, but are they really playing the game? I feel like I would rather just have somebody who's playing the game normally, wouldn't you? Wouldn't it be odd if somebody was just there but didn't try to do anything? And in EDH, it's a little different. In Catan, you can kind of make an argument that it's mostly just beneficial for everybody, but in EDH, that's not quite true. It doesn't make the game a 1v1v1 with somebody else there. It's more like a 1v1 v1.5. This is because of tempo. In Magic, tempo is essentially your overall board presence when compared to your opponents. The best example is just whoever goes first has the tempo advantage. The player who plays their land first gets to play their ramp first. The player who plays their ramp first gets to play their threats first, and then they get to attack with those threats before anybody else. There's just an inherent advantage to going first. Now, removal can offset this and shift the balance, and tempo can move around. But with a Group Hug player, the player immediately after them gets a massive tempo advantage. If the Group Hug player lets everybody put 3 lands into play, one player is going to be the first one to untap with those lands and utilize that mana. Or if they drew extra cards, they're the first one to untap with the extra cards and cast more things. The player to the left of the Group Hug player just gets a massive advantage, and if the Group Hug player is left to their own devices, I find that the player next to them is the one that usually ends up winning. Another problem with the imbalance is not every deck is equivalently powerful. Sometimes someone has a really strong start, maybe with a Sol Ring, or sometimes there's a deck that's a little bit stronger than the other ones at the table. Now, normally if this disparity isn't too great, then they just kind of become the arch enemy, and maybe the 3 players with slightly weaker decks, or who are just not in the lead at the moment, will sort of band together to slow down the deck that has gotten ahead. Except, what happens if one of those 3 players is actually helping the archenemy instead? Group Hug decks make power level differences in tables even worse. It just becomes so hard to take down that player who's in the lead when they're just being given extra cards and life and mana. Lastly, not every archetype benefits equivalently from Group Hug decks. A token deck can actually utilize random creatures they get better than other ones, or a landfall deck is going to get more use from extra lands coming into play. And one of the biggest beneficiaries are combo decks. Combo decks usually want to utilize cantrips, card draw, and tutors to sculpt their hand into a winning hand. Normally this means that they're probably kind of weak on board. They have less creatures in play, or less permanents in play in general if they're just tutoring up their big game-ending combo. Now, oftentimes you can pressure these players, but if a Feldergriff deck is giving them extra life, where's that pressure? They're gaining extra life, or extra cards. And all of this just makes it even harder for aggro decks to win. Aggro decks are already pretty difficult to pull off in EDH in general, and a group hug player letting everyone gain extra life can be just a death sentence for any aggro deck. And there's no politics for you to play either. Like, what are you going to tell the group hug player? Don't make everybody draw cards because I'm trying to knock out the control player because they have a better late game than me? I mean, the group hug player is clearly there just to do the one thing anyway, so there's nothing for you to do politically. So these are some of the reasons that group hug decks really bother me, and I just don't like seeing them at my tables. I feel like it throws off the dynamic of the whole game and causes more problems than anything else. It just leads to less fun Commander. But what about you? Do you like group hug decks? Do you agree with me? Have you run into similar situations? Let me know in the comments below. I'm always curious because everybody's Commander experience is so different. It's really fun just watching in the comments as people say that they've never seen situations that I talk about arise even a single time. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe for more.